Sometimes life forces us to choose between who we were and who we need to become. Sometimes the most invisible person in the room carries the heaviest secrets. Marcus Thorne works in coveralls now, fixing helicopters he once designed, trading his pilot wings for the chance to be home every night with his daughter. When CEO Vessa Sterling storms into the hangar, frustrated that her million-dollar prototype won't fly, she sees just another mechanic. With cameras rolling and executives watching, she mocks him. "Fix this helicopter and I'll kiss you." Everyone laughs. Marcus doesn't. He walks over, opens a panel, and gets to work. What happens next changes everything. But will Vessa keep her promise when she discovers who Marcus really is? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm clock's shrill cry pierced the pre-dawn darkness at 5:30 a.m., but Marcus Thorne was already awake, staring at the ceiling of his modest two-bedroom apartment. The same thoughts that visited him every morning had arrived early today. The weight of responsibilities, the careful balance between being enough for his daughter and keeping his past buried deep enough that it couldn't hurt either of them. He slipped from bed with practiced silence, padding across worn hardwood floors to check on Lily. At 8 years old, she slept with the complete abandon that only children possessed. Her dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink, one small hand clutching a stuffed helicopter he'd bought her 3 Christmases ago. The irony wasn't lost on him, even in sleep. Aviation followed them both. Marcus allowed himself these quiet moments each morning, watching his daughter breathe, counting each peaceful exhale as a small victory. 5 years of single parenthood had taught him that these stolen minutes of serenity were precious currency in a life that demanded constant vigilance. In the kitchen, he moved through the ritual of morning preparation with mechanical precision. Coffee first, black, strong enough to wake the dead. Lily's lunch next, carefully packed in the insulated bag she'd picked out herself, bright purple with silver stars. He left a note tucked beside her sandwich, the same message he'd written hundreds of times. "Have an amazing day. Daddy loves you more than all the stars." The drive to Meridian Aviation took 43 minutes in good traffic, threading through the industrial district where glass towers gave way to practical buildings, housing the kind of work that kept the world running. Marcus preferred it that way. Honest labor, predictable schedules, the satisfaction of fixing things that were broken. He'd been at Meridian for 3 years now, long enough to become part of the background machinery, reliable as the sunrise. The other mechanics respected his skill without asking too many questions about where he'd learned to read aircraft systems like poetry. Management appreciated that he never missed deadlines and rarely spoke unless spoken to. It was exactly the kind of invisible competence that allowed a man to rebuild his life in peace. The hangar stretched before him like a cathedral devoted to flight. Morning light filtering through massive windows to illuminate millions of dollars worth of aircraft in various states of assembly and repair. The familiar smell of hydraulic fluid and metal shavings welcomed him home, or at least to the closest thing he had to one outside his apartment. "Morning." "Marcus," called Jerry Bowen from beneath the belly of a corporate helicopter, his voice echoing off the concrete floor. Jerry had been at Meridian for 15 years. A good man with steady hands and a wife who packed him sandwiches that made everyone else's lunch look pitiful. "Morning." "Jerry, how's the hydraulic system looking?" "Better than yesterday, worse than I'd like." "Should have her purring by noon if the parts order came through." Marcus nodded, pulling on his coveralls with movements polished by repetition. The fabric was clean but showed honest wear, patches on both knees, a small tear near the left shoulder that he'd stitched himself rather than buy new ones. Every dollar saved was a dollar that could go toward Lily's future, toward the college fund that grew slowly but steadily in a savings account he never touched. His workstation occupied a corner of the hangar where natural light was best for detailed work. 3 helicopters waited for his attention, 2 routine maintenance jobs, and 1 mysterious newcomer that had arrived the previous evening under heavy security protocols. The newcomer sat apart from the others like a brooding celebrity, its sleek lines suggesting performance capabilities that made Marcus's pulse quicken, despite his determination to remain professionally detached. He recognized the prototype immediately, though he'd never seen this particular model completed. The frame design, the rotor configuration, the subtle innovations in weight distribution all bore the fingerprints of work he'd done in what felt like another lifetime. Seeing it now, transformed from blueprints into reality, stirred something in his chest that he'd worked hard to keep buried. The sound of expensive heels on concrete announced trouble. Before Marcus looked up to see Vessa Sterling approaching, with the purposeful stride of someone accustomed to having problems solved immediately. At 34, she carried herself with the confidence of a woman who'd never been told she couldn't have something she wanted. Her tailored suit and perfectly managed appearance marking her as someone who understood that image was often the most important weapon in any negotiation. "Where's Peterson?" she demanded, referring to the lead engineer who usually handled executive consultations. "Called in sick," Marcus replied without looking up from the maintenance schedule in his hands. "Something I can help you with?" Vessa's laugh held no humor. "Unless you have a PhD in aerospace engineering and 15 years of experience with next-generation rotorcraft, I doubt it." Marcus glanced at her then, taking in the frustration that vibrated beneath her professional composure. Dark hair pulled back in a style that suggested she'd been running her hands through it, slight shadows under green eyes that spoke of too many late nights spent fighting battles he couldn't imagine. She was beautiful in the way that powerful women often were, not just physically, but with the kind of presence that demanded attention, and got it. "Try me," he said simply. "The prototype has been grounded for 2 weeks. 5 different engineers have looked at it, including Peterson. The avionics check out, the mechanical systems are perfect, but something's wrong. It won't maintain stable flight for more than 30 seconds before the whole system starts fighting itself." Marcus set down his clipboard and walked toward the aircraft, circling it slowly while Vessa watched with poorly concealed impatience. He could feel her irritation building as he took his time, examining connection points and access panels with the thoroughness of someone who understood that the devil always lived in the details. "When are the cameras arriving?" he asked. "What cameras?" "For the demonstration. You've got board members flying in from New York, potential investors who want to see this thing perform, and probably at least one reporter who's been promised exclusive access to your revolutionary new design." Marcus ran his hand along the fuselage, fingers finding imperfections invisible to casual observation. "You wouldn't be down here personally unless the stakes were high enough to make or break careers." Vessa's silence confirmed his assessment. The demonstration was scheduled for later that morning, a carefully choreographed event designed to showcase Meridian's technological superiority and Vessa's leadership. Failure wasn't just professional disappointment, it was corporate catastrophe. "Can you fix it or not?" she asked. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, seeing past the executive armor to the woman beneath who was fighting to prove herself in a world that questioned her capabilities every day. He understood that particular battle, though his own had taken different forms. "Probably," he said finally. "But it'll cost you. How much?" "A kiss." The words hung in the air between them like a challenge neither had expected. The moment stretched between them like a wire under tension, Marcus's unexpected proposition hanging in the air, while Vessa processed what she'd just heard. Around them, the hangar continued its morning routine. Mechanics arriving for their shifts, equipment humming to life, the comfortable sounds of productive work, but in their small corner of the vast space. "Time seems suspended, excuse me?" Vessa's voice carried the sharp edge of someone unaccustomed to being propositioned by employees, especially ones wearing coveralls and carrying grease-stained rags. Marcus shrugged, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You asked what it would cost. That's my price. You're serious? Completely. Fix the helicopter. Get a kiss from the beautiful CEO. Seems like fair compensation for saving your demonstration." The arrival of the camera crew interrupted whatever response Vessa might have offered. 3 technicians wheeled equipment through the hangar's main entrance, followed by a reporter Marcus recognized from the local business news. Behind them came the real audience. 4 men in expensive suits who moved with the purposeful authority of people whose time was measured in millions of dollars per hour. "Miss Sterling?" The lead cameraman approached with professional deference. "We're ready to set up whenever you are." Vessa straightened, her executive persona sliding back into place like armor. "Give me 10 minutes. I need to discuss some technical details with our—" She glanced at Marcus, "with our specialist." As the crew began positioning their equipment, more people filtered into the hangar. Word had spread through the building that something important was happening, drawing engineers, administrative staff, and curious mechanics who found reasons to linger near their workstations. Marcus recognized the signs of corporate theater, the careful staging that transformed technical demonstrations into moments of company legend. "This is ridiculous," Vessa said, lowering her voice as the crowd grew. "I can't make that kind of deal with an employee." "Then I guess your prototype stays grounded." Marcus turned back toward his regular workstation, but Vessa caught his arm. "Wait." Her grip was firm, her green eyes searching his face for something she couldn't quite identify. "You really think you can fix it?" "I know I can." "How?" Marcus glanced around the hangar, noting the positions of cameras and crew members, the expectant faces of colleagues who'd never seen him as anything more than reliable background support. "Because I helped design it." The admission landed like a physical blow. Vessa's hand dropped from his arm as she took a step back, her mind racing through implications and possibilities she hadn't considered. The prototype helicopter represented 18 months of development, millions of dollars in research costs, and the culmination of technological advances that were supposed to establish Meridian as an industry leader. That's impossible. The design team was Peterson, Kellner, and... She stopped, her executive memory accessing files she'd reviewed during her first weeks as CEO. There was a third engineer. Someone who left the project early. "Marcus Thorne," he said quietly. "Lead systems integration specialist. Though back then people called me by my middle name." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Vessa had read the personnel files, had wondered about the missing engineer whose departure had caused significant project delays. She'd assumed he'd been poached by a competitor or had moved to another industry entirely. She'd never imagined he was working in her own hangar, invisible in plain sight. "Why didn't you say anything? 3 years you've been here and you never—" "Because I didn't want this." Marcus gestured toward the cameras, the suits, the growing audience of onlookers. "I wanted to come to work, do my job, and go home to my daughter. Simple, quiet, safe." "Safe from what?" Before Marcus could answer, Peterson burst through the hangar doors with the frantic energy of someone who'd received an urgent phone call. Despite claiming illness, he looked healthy enough to run a marathon, his sudden appearance confirming Marcus's suspicion that office politics ran deeper than anyone admitted publicly. "Vessa, thank God you're here. I just heard about the demonstration. Are we really going ahead with—" Peterson stopped mid-sentence as he noticed Marcus standing beside the prototype. "What's he doing here?" "Apparently," Vessa said, her voice carefully controlled, "he's going to fix our helicopter." Peterson's laugh held genuine amusement. "Marcus, he's a mechanic. A good one, I'll give you that. But this isn't about changing oil or replacing worn parts. This is advanced aeronautical engineering." The cameraman cleared his throat. "Ms. Sterling, we're ready when you are." Vessa looked between Peterson and Marcus, acutely aware that her next decision would be recorded for posterity and broadcast to potential investors who expected confident leadership, not corporate uncertainty. The smart move was to postpone the demonstration, admit technical difficulties, and schedule another attempt after proper troubleshooting. Instead, she found herself stepping closer to the prototype, her voice carrying clearly across the hangar. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. Meridian Aviation has always believed that innovation comes from unexpected places, and today we're going to prove that principle." She turned to face Marcus, her professional smile firmly in place. Mr. Thorne here believes he can solve our technical challenge. In fact, he's so confident that he's made me an interesting wager. Marcus felt the weight of every eye in the hangar, the subtle pressure of cameras recording his every movement. This was exactly what he'd spent 3 years avoiding: attention, scrutiny, the kind of professional exposure that could complicate a carefully constructed life. "Fix this helicopter," Vessa announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. "And I'll kiss you." The reaction was immediate and electric. Laughter rippled through the crowd, followed by scattered applause and a few wolf whistles from the mechanics, who appreciated the theatrical boldness of the moment. Peterson's face flushed with embarrassment or anger. Marcus couldn't tell which, while the camera crew adjusted their positions to capture every angle. Marcus looked at Vessa, seeing past the public performance to the woman beneath who was betting her professional reputation on a maintenance worker's unexpected claim. She'd called his bluff, raised the stakes, and transformed a private moment into public spectacle. He walked to the prototype without another word, the crowd following his movement like spectators at a tennis match. The access panel he wanted was positioned along the aircraft's left side, secured with standard fasteners that yielded easily to his practiced hands. Inside the panel lay the heart of the problem, a configuration error so subtle that it would be invisible to anyone who hadn't lived with the design specifications for months during development. 2 wire harnesses had been swapped during assembly, creating an electrical feedback loop that would manifest as flight instability exactly 30 seconds after takeoff. Marcus switched the connections, his movements sure and economical. Around him, the hangar had fallen silent except for the whisper of camera motors and the distant hum of ventilation systems. He closed the panel, secured the fasteners, and stepped back. "Try it now," he said simply. The moment would be replayed countless times in the days that followed, analyzed and dissected by people who wanted to understand how a forgotten engineer had emerged from obscurity to save Meridian's most important demonstration. But in that instant, with cameras rolling and careers hanging in the balance, only one thing mattered: the prototype roared to life with perfect mechanical harmony, its systems synchronizing in the elegant dance of properly functioning technology. The rotors spun without vibration, the avionics panels showed green across all indicators, and the aircraft lifted smoothly from the hangar floor to hover 6 feet above the concrete with rock-steady precision. Vessa Sterling had a promise to keep. The kiss lasted exactly 3 seconds, long enough to fulfill the letter of their agreement, brief enough to maintain some semblance of professional dignity. Yet those 3 seconds seemed to stretch into infinity under the weight of dozens of watching eyes, camera lenses, and the sudden, unexpected chemistry that sparked between them. When Vessa pulled back, her cheeks carried a flush that had nothing to do with embarrassment and everything to do with the realization that Marcus Thorne was far more complex than his coveralls suggested. The applause that erupted around them felt distant, muffled by the sudden awareness that something fundamental had shifted between them. "Well," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, "a promise is a promise." Marcus nodded, already stepping away from the spotlight and back toward the anonymity he preferred. But the damage was done, or perhaps the revelation was complete. The footage would be edited, broadcast, and uploaded to social media platforms where it would live forever. Marking the moment when a hidden genius emerged from the shadows, Peterson appeared at Vessa's elbow, his expression carefully neutral for the cameras, while his voice carried the tight control of someone suppressing significant irritation. "Perhaps we should discuss the technical details privately." Of course. Vessa managed her executive smile, while her mind raced through the implications of what had just happened. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for witnessing this successful demonstration. Mr. Peterson and I will be available for technical questions in the conference room." As the crowd began to disperse, Marcus found himself surrounded by colleagues whose perception of him had shifted dramatically in the span of 10 minutes. Jerry Bowen clapped him on the shoulder with genuine admiration, while other mechanics offered congratulations that carried undertones of bewilderment. "How long you been holding out on us, Marcus?" asked Tony Ricci, a hydraulic specialist who'd worked beside him for 2 years without suspecting his background. "All this time we thought you were just another wrench turner." "Still am," Marcus replied, but the words felt hollow even to him. The careful separation between his past and present had been breached, and there was no rebuilding that wall. He escaped to the parking lot during his lunch break, needing space to process what had just happened. The call to Lily's school was automatic, a daily check-in that had become routine since he'd started working day shifts. "Riverside Elementary. This is Mrs. Rodriguez. This is Marcus Thorne, Lily's father. Just checking to see how her day's going." "Oh, Mr. Thorne. Actually, I'm glad you called. Lily's been telling everyone that her daddy used to build helicopters. The other children are quite impressed." Marcus closed his eyes, leaning against his truck in the autumn sunshine. "She said that during show and tell this morning. She brought that little helicopter toy of hers and told the most wonderful story about how you used to design real ones before you became a mechanic. The children were fascinated." "I see. She's very proud of you, you know. She talks about you constantly, how hard you work, how you help her with homework, how you never miss her school events. She's a lucky little girl to have such a devoted father." The words should have brought comfort, but instead they highlighted the precarious balance Marcus had worked so hard to maintain. Lily understood, in the way children do, that their current life was built on sacrifice. She'd never questioned why they lived in a small apartment instead of the house her classmates took for granted. Never complained about generic groceries or second-hand clothes. "Thank you. Mrs. Rodriguez, I'll see her at pickup." The afternoon passed in a haze of routine maintenance work, but Marcus could feel the weight of changed perceptions in every interaction. Colleagues who had barely acknowledged him before now sought opportunities for conversation, probing with questions disguised as casual interest. "So you really designed that prototype? How come you never mentioned your engineering background? Peterson must have been surprised to see you fix it so quickly." Each question required careful navigation, deflection disguised as modesty. Marcus had spent 3 years perfecting the art of being unremarkable, and in a single morning, that carefully constructed invisibility had evaporated. At 3:15, he stood outside Riverside Elementary with the other parents, watching for Lily's distinctive backpack among the stream of children emerging from the building. She spotted him immediately and ran across the playground with the uninhibited joy that made every challenge of single parenthood worthwhile. "Daddy!" Mrs. Rodriguez said you called. "Did something happen? Are you okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just wanted to check on you." Lily studied his face with the perceptive intensity that 8-year-olds possessed, reading subtle signals that adults often missed. "You look different. Tired, but not regular tired." Thinking tired, they walked to the truck together, Lily chattering about her day, while Marcus processed the strange mixture of pride and anxiety that had been building since morning. His daughter's happiness was the foundation of every decision he'd made for the past 5 years, the North Star that guided choices both large and small. "I told everyone about your helicopters today," Lily said as they drove home through familiar neighborhoods. "Sophie's dad is a lawyer, and Kevin's mom is a doctor, but you used to build flying machines. That's way cooler. What else did you tell them? That you stopped building helicopters so you could take care of me better. That you wanted to be home every night instead of traveling all the time." Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror, meeting his daughter's eyes. "And what did they think about that?" "Sophie said her dad misses lots of stuff because of work. Kevin's mom too. So I told them you never miss anything important because you love me more than flying machines." The simple honesty of it nearly broke his heart. Lily understood the sacrifice without resentment, accepted their circumstances without complaint, and found pride in his choice to prioritize family over professional achievement. Her resilience humbled him daily. That evening, while Lily worked on homework at the kitchen table, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Vessa Sterling. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 7 a.m., my office." He stared at the message for a long moment, aware that his carefully ordered world was about to become significantly more complicated. The demonstration had been successful. The prototype was flying perfectly, and by all accounts, he should feel satisfied with a job well done. Instead, he felt exposed, vulnerable in ways he hadn't experienced since the early days of single parenthood, when every decision carried potentially catastrophic consequences. The attention that came with recognition was a luxury he couldn't afford, not when stability was everything, and stability depended on remaining unremarkable. "Daddy, can you help me with this math problem?" Marcus slipped the phone into his pocket and moved to the table, settling beside his daughter to examine the worksheet that represented her current challenge. Third-grade mathematics was refreshingly straightforward compared to the complex equations that governed flight dynamics, and helping Lily work through problems felt like a return to solid ground after a day of unexpected turbulence. "What's giving you trouble?" "Word problems. I can do the math part, but I don't understand what they're asking for." Together, they read through the problem, breaking down the language into manageable components. Marcus watched Lily's face light up as comprehension dawned, her pencil moving confidently across the paper to record the correct answer. These were the moments that mattered. Quiet evenings. Homework help? The ordinary miracles of parenthood that had replaced the adrenaline rush of professional achievement. Tomorrow would bring new complications, difficult conversations, and choices that could alter the trajectory of their carefully constructed life. Tonight, though, there was just a father helping his daughter with mathematics. And that was enough. 7 a.m. arrived with the punctuality of obligation, finding Marcus outside the executive offices of Meridian Aviation, with coffee growing cold in his hands and questions multiplying in his mind. The administrative floor felt alien after 3 years of hangar work, plush carpeting instead of concrete, abstract art instead of toolboards, the hushed efficiency of corporate power rather than the honest noise of productive labor. Vessa's assistant, a polished young woman whose nameplate read Jennifer Dawson, gestured him toward the inner office with the kind of professional courtesy that made clear he was outside his usual environment. The space beyond was exactly what he'd expected from a CEO who'd inherited both responsibility and pressure in equal measure. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the airfield, a conference table that could seat 12, and a desk positioned to command respect from anyone who entered. "Please, sit." Vessa gestured toward the chairs facing her desk, her manner more formal than it had been in the hangar. The kiss, Marcus realized, had complicated things for both of them in ways neither had anticipated. "I've been reviewing your personnel file," she continued, opening a folder that contained more information about his past than he'd shared with anyone in 3 years. Marcus Daniel Thorne, MIT graduate, former Air Force pilot, lead systems engineer on 3 major aircraft projects before joining Meridian. The question is why someone with your qualifications is working as a maintenance mechanic. Marcus settled into the chair, studying her face for clues about her intentions. Sometimes life requires different priorities, such as a daughter who needs stability more than she needs a father chasing career advancement. Vessa leaned back, her expression softening slightly. "Tell me about that. The transition from engineer to mechanic, I mean. That's not a change people make lightly." The story wasn't one Marcus told often, but something in Vessa's manner, professional curiosity tempered with genuine interest, encouraged honesty. "When my wife died, Lily was 3. I was traveling constantly, working on projects that kept me away from home weeks at a time. After the funeral, I found myself in a hotel room in Seattle, staring at a prototype that suddenly seemed less important than bedtime stories. So you walked away. I renegotiated, asked for local assignments, reduced travel, more predictable schedules. The company said it wasn't possible. Innovation requires flexibility, they told me. So I made a choice." Vessa nodded slowly, processing implications that went beyond simple career decisions. "The maintenance position here, that was intentional. You sought out work that would keep you grounded? Regular hours, no travel, honest work that lets me be home every night. It seemed like everything I needed, until yesterday. Yesterday was an anomaly, a moment when my old life intersected with my current one. Vessa stood and moved to the window, gazing out at the airfield where aircraft moved with the choreographed precision of controlled chaos. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman wrestling with competing priorities, trying to balance corporate needs with human complexity. The board was impressed, she said finally. More than impressed, they're intrigued. The story of a hidden genius working in our own hangar appeals to them on multiple levels. Great publicity, evidence of our company's depth of talent, proof that innovation can come from unexpected places. Marcus felt the familiar weight of unwanted attention settling on his shoulders. I'm not looking for recognition. Unfortunately, recognition has found you anyway. The video has been viewed 12,000 times since yesterday afternoon. 3 business publications have called requesting interviews. Peterson is fielding questions from competitors who want to know how we managed to keep your background quiet for 3 years. The numbers landed like physical blows. Marcus had hoped that corporate discretion might contain the story, keep it within the boundaries of Meridian's internal communications. Instead, it was spreading with the viral velocity that characterized modern information sharing. What do you want from me? Vessa turned from the window, her expression resolute. I want to offer you the position you should have had from the beginning. Senior engineering consultant, full design authority on the prototype program, compensation commensurate with your experience and contributions. The offer hung between them like a bridge Marcus wasn't sure he wanted to cross. Financial security, professional recognition, the opportunity to return to work that challenged him intellectually. Everything he'd given up 5 years ago was being offered back with interest. And the travel requirements? Minimal. Occasional conferences, but nothing like your previous position. Most of the work can be done here, with our teams on schedules you helped determine. Marcus studied her face, searching for hidden motivations or corporate maneuvering. Why? You could hire any number of qualified engineers with current experience. Why invest in someone who's been out of the design loop for years? Because yesterday proved that your time in maintenance hasn't diminished your capabilities. It's enhanced them. You understand these machines at a level that pure theorists never achieve. You know how designs translate into real-world functionality. And if I say no, then you go back to your workstation and continue as before. But the attention isn't going away, Marcus. The story is out there now, and people are going to have questions regardless of your official title. The truth of that statement settled like lead in his stomach. The careful anonymity he'd cultivated was gone, destroyed by 3 seconds of problem-solving and a kiss that had been witnessed by cameras and curious colleagues. He could return to the hangar, but he couldn't return to invisibility. I need to think about it, of course. Take the time you need. Marcus stood to leave, but Vessa's voice stopped him at the door. There's something else. Something I discovered when I was reviewing your file. He turned back, already knowing from her tone that whatever came next would complicate things further. Your security clearance is still active. The projects you worked on before, some of that technology has applications to our current development programs. The Department of Defense has expressed interest in adapting our prototype for military applications. The words hit him like a physical force. Military contracts meant federal oversight, background investigations, the kind of scrutiny that could uncover details about his life that he'd worked hard to keep private. It also meant resources, funding, and opportunities that could transform Meridian from a regional player into a major contractor. I see. The preliminary discussions are promising, very promising. But they want to work with engineers who understand both the technology and the operational requirements. People like you. Marcus nodded, understanding now why the offer had come so quickly, why Vessa seemed so eager to formalize his change in status. The kiss had been spontaneous, but the conversation was strategic, an attempt to secure his cooperation for opportunities that extended far beyond helicopter design. How long do I have to decide? The initial contract discussions begin next week. I need an answer by Friday. 5 days to choose between the stability he'd built and the professional challenges that beckoned from his past. 5 days to decide whether to risk everything he'd worked to protect for the chance to reclaim everything he'd given up. As Marcus walked back toward the hangar, his phone buzzed with a reminder about Lily's parent-teacher conference that evening. The mundane notification felt like an anchor, grounding him in the reality of responsibilities that transcended corporate opportunities and military contracts. Whatever decision he made would affect more than just his career. It would reshape the life he'd built with his daughter, alter the careful balance between security and ambition that had defined their relationship for 5 years. The weight of that responsibility felt heavier than any engineering challenge he'd ever faced. The parent-teacher conference occupied a cramped classroom where miniature chairs and construction paper artwork created an atmosphere of determined optimism. Mrs. Rodriguez, Lily's teacher, had arranged 2 adult-sized chairs facing her desk in acknowledgement of the physical limitations imposed by third-grade furniture. The setting felt surreal after a morning spent discussing military contracts and corporate strategy. "Lily is an exceptional student," Mrs. Rodriguez began, opening a folder filled with work samples and assessment scores. "Academically, she's performing above grade level in mathematics and reading comprehension. But what really sets her apart is her emotional maturity." Marcus nodded, familiar with his daughter's particular blend of intelligence and sensitivity. 5 years of single parenthood had accelerated certain aspects of her development while preserving the essential wonder that made childhood precious. She's become something of a leader among her classmates. When conflicts arise, other children often turn to her for mediation. She has an unusual ability to see multiple perspectives and find compromises that satisfy everyone involved. "She gets that from her mother," Marcus said quietly, the words carrying the weight of memories he rarely shared. Sarah always could find common ground where others saw only disagreement. Mrs. Rodriguez's expression softened with understanding. The school's records included basic information about family structure, but the emotional reality of single parenthood was something that revealed itself gradually through interactions and observations. Lily talks about her mother sometimes, always with affection, never with sadness. That speaks to how you've helped her process that loss. The conversation continued through academic progress reports and social development assessments, painting a picture of a child who was thriving despite circumstances that might have derailed others. As they talked, Marcus found himself thinking about the choices that had brought them to this moment, the decisions that had prioritized stability over ambition, presence over professional achievement. "There is one thing I wanted to discuss," Mrs. Rodriguez said, as the formal review concluded. Lily's Career Day presentation last month was quite remarkable. She spoke about engineering with such enthusiasm and knowledge that several parents asked me about her background. Marcus felt the familiar tension that accompanied any discussion of his professional history. "She's always been interested in how things work. When I asked her about it later, she told me that you used to design helicopters, but stopped because you wanted to spend more time with her. She seemed very proud of that sacrifice." "It wasn't a sacrifice. It was a choice, of course, but I couldn't help wondering if there might be opportunities to share that expertise with our students. We're always looking for parent volunteers who can bring real-world experience to our science curriculum." The request was innocent enough, but it represented another crack in the wall Marcus had built between his past and present. Each revelation, each acknowledgement of his background, made it harder to maintain the separation that protected both him and Lily from complications. "They didn't need. I'll think about it," he said. Finally, the drive home took them through neighborhoods where other families were navigating their own versions of the evening routine: homework supervision, dinner preparation. the delicate balance between structure and spontaneity that defined successful parenting. Marcus envied those parents whose biggest concerns involved soccer schedules and piano lessons rather than corporate offers that could reshape entire life trajectories. "How was work today?" Lily asked as they pulled into their apartment complex, her question carrying the casual interest of someone who trusted that adult problems were manageable and would be resolved without disrupting her. "Well, interesting, complicated, good complicated or bad complicated." Marcus parked the truck and turned to face his daughter, struck once again by her ability to cut through complexity to reach essential questions. "I'm not sure yet. Maybe both." They climbed the stairs to their second-floor apartment, passing neighbors whose lives followed predictable patterns that Marcus had once found comforting. Mrs. Patterson watering her plants on the balcony, the college students in 2B arguing about whose turn it was to buy groceries, the familiar sounds of ordinary domestic life. Inside their own space, Lily settled at the kitchen table with homework, while Marcus began the dinner ritual that anchored their evenings. Tonight's menu was simple: grilled chicken, steamed vegetables, rice, the kind of nutritious but unexciting fare that reflected both budget constraints and his limited culinary skills. "Daddy?" Lily's voice carried the tone she used when approaching subjects that required careful navigation. "Mrs. Rodriguez said you might come to our science class to talk about engineering. She mentioned that possibility. Would you want to do that? Talk to my class about helicopters and stuff?" Marcus paused in his meal preparation, considering the implications of increased visibility in Lily's school environment. Once word spread about his background, and word always spread in communities where parents had limited conversation, topics, the careful boundaries he'd established would become increasingly difficult to maintain. "Would you want me to?" "Kind of. I mean, yes, but also." She set down her pencil and looked at him directly. "I like that you're my daddy first and engineer second. Some of my friends' parents, they're so busy with important work that they miss lots of stuff. I don't want you to become too important to come to my school things." The honesty of her concern cut deeper than any corporate pressure or professional opportunity. Lily understood, with the clarity that children possessed, that increased professional prominence could threaten the stability they'd built together. Her fear wasn't about his capabilities or interests. It was about priorities and the possibility that success might pull him away from the life they'd carefully constructed. "That's not going to happen," Marcus said, settling beside her at the table. "Whatever else changes, being your daddy comes first, always. Promise?" Promise. They ate dinner while Lily shared details about her day, a playground dispute she'd helped resolve, a science experiment involving plant growth, her friend Michelle's upcoming birthday party. The ordinary concerns of childhood felt like a shield against the corporate complexities that had dominated Marcus's thoughts since morning. Later, as he helped Lily with a reading assignment, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text message. The number was Vessa's, the message brief. "Dinner tomorrow? We should discuss the proposal away from the office." He stared at the screen while Lily read aloud from a book about a young girl learning to ride a bicycle. The parallel wasn't lost on him. Both stories involved individuals facing decisions about when to let go of familiar support systems and trust their ability to navigate more challenging terrain. "Good job," he told Lily as she finished the chapter. "Your reading is getting much smoother." "Thanks. The words are starting to make more sense when I put them together. That's how most things work. Individual pieces that don't mean much until you see how they fit together as they move through the bedtime routine. Teeth brushing, pajamas, the selection of tomorrow's clothes." Marcus found himself thinking about patterns and connections, about the ways that seemingly unrelated events could combine to create new possibilities or unexpected challenges. Tucking Lily into bed required the familiar negotiation of story requests and light preferences, the gradual transition from active engagement to quiet preparation for sleep. These rituals had evolved over 5 years of single parenthood, becoming as essential to Marcus's sense of purpose as any professional achievement. "Daddy?" Lily's voice was soft in the darkened room. Are you happy being a mechanic? The question hung in the darkness, weighted with implications that an 8-year-old couldn't fully understand, but somehow intuited. Marcus sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. I'm happy being your father. The job is just how I make that possible. But if you could do something different, something that made you excited like when you talk about flying? Marcus smiled, though she couldn't see it in the darkness. Right now, nothing makes me more excited than watching you grow up into the amazing person you're becoming. The answer satisfied her, as he'd known it would. But as he sat in the living room afterward, staring at Vessa's text message, Marcus realized that the question had forced him to confront truths he'd been avoiding since yesterday's demonstration. He was happy being Lily's father, fulfilled by the daily privilege of guiding her development and ensuring her security. But there were moments, fleeting instances when he solved complex problems or glimpsed the elegant mathematics underlying flight dynamics, when he felt the pull of intellectual challenges that maintenance work couldn't provide. The text message represented more than a dinner invitation. It was an opportunity to explore possibilities that could satisfy both aspects of his identity, the devoted father and the accomplished engineer who still existed beneath the surface of his carefully constructed new life. The restaurant Vessa had chosen occupied the ground floor of a converted warehouse in the arts district, the kind of place where exposed brick walls and industrial lighting created an atmosphere of casual sophistication. Marcus arrived 15 minutes early, partly from habit and partly from nervousness about a meeting that felt more personal than professional, despite its corporate implications. He'd left Lily with Mrs. Patterson, their neighbor who occasionally provided babysitting in exchange for Marcus's help with household repairs that exceeded her physical capabilities. The arrangement worked well for both parties, though Lily had asked pointed questions about why he needed to go out on a school night. Just a work meeting, he'd explained, which was technically true, even if it felt like something more complicated. Vessa arrived precisely on time. Her transformation from corporate executive to evening companion, marked by the substitution of a flowing dress for her usual business attire. The change was subtle but significant, suggesting that she too understood this conversation would traverse territory beyond standard professional boundaries. Thank you for coming, she said as they were seated at a corner table that offered privacy without isolation. I thought we could talk more freely away from the office. Marcus nodded, studying the menu while trying to process the strangeness of sharing dinner with someone who'd been a distant authority figure until 2 days ago. The shift in their dynamic felt both natural and disorienting, as if familiar rules no longer applied to their interactions. Have you given any thought to the offer? Vessa asked after they'd ordered. Constantly. It's a generous proposal, but you have reservations. Marcus set down his water glass, choosing his words carefully. My life works right now. Lily is thriving, we have stability, and I can be present for everything that matters to her. Any change to that dynamic carries risks I'm not sure I'm willing to take. Vessa leaned forward slightly, her expression intent. What if I told you that the change could enhance that stability rather than threaten it? The salary increase alone would provide opportunities for Lily that your current position can't support, such as private schools with advanced programs, college savings that would eliminate financial stress, a house instead of an apartment, summer camps, music lessons, travel, all the experiences that enrich childhood but require resources you currently don't have. The words struck home because they reflected desires Marcus had pushed aside for practical reasons. He'd convinced himself that love and attention could substitute for material advantages, that Lily's happiness didn't depend on expensive opportunities. But watching other children benefit from resources their families could afford had planted seeds of doubt about whether his choices were truly serving her best interests. You've done research, he said. I care about my employees' well-being, particularly employees whose talents have been underutilized due to circumstances beyond their control. And what about the military contracts? The security clearance reviews? The kind of attention that comes with high-profile projects? Vessa's pause was telling. There would be additional scrutiny, yes, but nothing that would threaten your custody or stability. You have an exemplary record, both professionally and personally. You sound very certain about that. I am. I've had my security team run preliminary checks. Standard procedure for potential defense contractors. The admission landed like a cold shock. Marcus set down his fork, his appetite suddenly gone. You investigated me without my permission? Basic background verification. Nothing invasive or inappropriate, but enough to confirm that you have nothing to worry about from federal review processes. That wasn't your decision to make. Vessa's confidence faltered slightly. You're right. I overstepped and I apologize. But the military opportunity is significant, Marcus. Big enough to transform Meridian into a major player in defense contracting. The initial contract alone is worth $40 million. The number hung between them like a bridge he wasn't sure he wanted to cross. $40 million represented security on a scale that could reshape not just his career, but his daughter's entire future. It also represented complications and pressures that could destroy the careful balance he'd worked so hard to achieve. Why me? You could hire experienced defense contractors, people who understand military requirements without the complications I bring, because the Pentagon specifically requested you. Your previous work on classified projects, your understanding of both design theory and operational reality. They want someone who can bridge the gap between innovation and practical application. Marcus felt the familiar weight of unwanted recognition settling on his shoulders. The same expertise that had once opened doors was now threatening to drag him back into a world he'd deliberately left behind. I need to ask you something, he said. The kiss yesterday, was that genuine, or was it part of some larger strategy to secure my cooperation? Vessa's surprise appeared authentic. Do you really think I would stage something like that for corporate purposes? I think you're a smart businesswoman who understands how to leverage personal connections for professional advantage. You're not wrong about my business instincts. But what happened yesterday, the attraction, the chemistry, that caught me completely off guard. I don't make a habit of kissing employees, regardless of the circumstances. Marcus studied her face, searching for signs of calculation or manipulation. Instead, he saw something that looked like vulnerability, a momentary crack in the professional armor that revealed someone as uncertain about personal boundaries as he was. For what it's worth, she continued, the job offer stands regardless of anything personal between us. Your qualifications speak for themselves, and if there was something personal between us, how would that work with the professional relationship? Carefully. With clear boundaries and complete transparency. I'm not naive about the complications, but I'm also not willing to let corporate policy dictate my personal life. The honesty was refreshing after days of feeling like a chess piece being moved around a board he couldn't see. Marcus found himself relaxing for the first time since the demonstration, allowing the possibility that Vessa's interest might be genuine rather than strategic. Tell me about your life outside work, he said. What does success look like for someone who's already achieved everything most people dream of? Vessa's laugh held little humor. Success is relative. Yes, I have professional recognition and financial security, but I work 14-hour days, eat most meals alone, and can't remember the last time I had a conversation that wasn't about quarterly projections or market share. Why haven't you built something more personal? Time, mostly. And the difficulty of finding someone who sees past the CEO title to the person underneath. Most men are either intimidated by my position or interested only in what it might offer them. Marcus nodded, understanding the isolation that came with professional prominence. And now you're sitting across from a mechanic who gave up his career to change diapers and pack school lunches. Now I'm sitting across from a brilliant engineer who made choices based on love rather than ambition. Do you have any idea how rare that is in my world? The admission carried weight that went beyond professional appreciation. Vessa was revealing something fundamental about her values. her respect for priorities that differed from her own experience. What happens if I take the job and we try to navigate something personal at the same time? Honestly, I don't know. We'd be writing the rules as we go, trying to balance competing interests and complicated emotions. It might be a disaster, or it might be exactly what we both need. Or that, Marcus felt the pull of possibility. Professional challenges that excited him intellectually, financial security that could transform his daughter's future, and the unexpected attraction to a woman who understood ambition but respected sacrifice. The decision was no longer simply about career advancement. It was about whether he was ready to risk the careful stability he'd built for the chance at something richer and more complex. Something that might include love. The envelope arrived on Friday morning, delivered by certified mail with the kind of official weight that transformed ordinary days into turning points. Marcus signed for it at the apartment complex office, recognizing the law firm's letterhead even before he read the return address. Wallace, Burton and Associates, the same firm that had handled his late wife's estate, now representing interests that threatened everything he'd built since her death. He waited until after dropping Lily at school to open it, sitting in his truck in the elementary school parking lot while other parents completed their morning routines with blissful ignorance of legal complications. The letter was professionally worded but brutally direct. Mr. Thorne, we represent Mr. and Mrs. David Sterling, grandparents of Lily Sarah Thorne. Our clients have retained our services to pursue modification of custody arrangements based on new information regarding your employment status and living circumstances. Recent media coverage of your professional background has raised questions about the accuracy of representations made during previous custody discussions. The words blurred as Marcus's vision tunneled with the sudden surge of adrenaline that accompanied genuine threat. David and Martha Sterling, his late wife's parents, had never fully accepted his role as primary guardian. They'd acquiesced to the arrangement after Sarah's death, partly because they lived across the country, and partly because their own health issues made full-time childcare impractical. But they'd never stopped believing that Lily belonged with family, who could provide advantages that a single father couldn't match, the letter continued, with legal precision that made each accusation feel like a physical blow. Specifically, our clients question why you misrepresented your professional qualifications and financial capacity during initial custody proceedings. The disparity between your stated employment as a maintenance mechanic and your actual background as an aerospace engineer suggests deliberate deception regarding your ability to provide appropriate care and stability. Marcus's hands shook as he read the formal language that twisted his sacrifices into evidence of deception. The choices he'd made to prioritize fatherhood over career advancement were being reframed as dishonesty. His decision to trade professional recognition for presence in Lily's life portrayed as fraud. The final paragraph delivered the knockout punch. Our clients intend to petition the court for modification of custody to reflect Lily's best interests, including relocation to their home in California, where she would benefit from superior educational opportunities, extended family support, and financial security commensurate with her mother's family background. We respectfully request your cooperation in arranging a transition that minimizes disruption to the child's welfare. Marcus sat in the truck for 20 minutes, reading and rereading the letter while trying to process implications that felt too enormous to comprehend. Everything he'd worked to protect, the quiet life he'd built, the stability that allowed Lily to thrive, the careful balance between past and present, was under attack by people who saw his love as inadequate and his sacrifices as deception. His phone buzzed with a text from Vessa. Have you made a decision about the offer? The military representatives want to schedule preliminary meetings next week. The timing felt like cosmic irony. The same professional recognition that was supposed to validate his worth was being used as evidence against his fitness as a father. Success in one arena had become a liability in another, forcing him to choose between professional fulfillment and parental rights. He drove to work in a haze of barely controlled panic. The letter sitting on the passenger seat like radioactive material that contaminated everything it touched. The hangar felt different now, not a refuge from complexity, but a stage where every interaction carried consequences he couldn't predict or control. "You look like someone died," Jerry Bowen observed as Marcus mechanically began his daily equipment check. "Everything okay?" "Family stuff," Marcus replied. The understatement of the decade, delivered in a tone that discouraged further questions. But Jerry had known Marcus long enough to recognize the difference between ordinary stress and genuine crisis. "Anything I can help with?" Sometimes talking through problems with someone outside the situation can clarify things. Marcus almost laughed at the suggestion that this situation could be clarified through conversation. The letter represented a legal assault on his most fundamental identity, a challenge to his right to be the person Sarah had chosen to raise their daughter. No amount of discussion could change the basic facts. He'd built his post-military life on choices that prioritized love over achievement. And now those choices were being used against him. "I appreciate the offer, but this is something I need to handle alone." The morning crawled by with mechanical slowness, each routine task feeling surreal against the backdrop of potential catastrophe. Marcus found himself watching colleagues differently, wondering which of them had families that could be threatened by legal action. Who among them lived with the constant awareness that external forces could reshape their lives without warning? At lunch, he called the law firm that had handled Sarah's estate, hoping for advice or at least perspective from someone who understood the original custody arrangement. The conversation was brief and discouraging. "The Sterlings have legitimate grounds for requesting modification," the lawyer explained with professional detachment. "Changes in your financial status, new information about your background, media attention that could affect the child's privacy, any of these factors could justify court review." "What are my chances?" "Depends on how the case is presented. If they can demonstrate that your original representations were misleading, if they can show financial instability or inappropriate exposure." "I've been a good father." "Lily is happy, healthy, thriving in school." "I'm sure you have been. But family court focuses on best interests of the child, not parental rights. Grandparents with substantial resources and stable home. Environment, particularly maternal grandparents, often receive favorable consideration." Marcus hung up, feeling like the ground beneath his feet had shifted to quicksand. Everything he'd built, the careful routines, the financial planning, the network of support that made single parenthood manageable, could be dismantled by people who saw his daughter as a prize to be won rather than a person to be protected. He spent the afternoon wrestling with questions that had no good answers. Should he accept Vessa's offer, embrace the financial security and professional recognition that might strengthen his position in court? Or would that validate the Sterling's claim that he'd been dishonest about his capabilities and intentions? At 3:15, he stood outside Riverside Elementary with the other parents, watching for Lily's distinctive backpack, while trying to imagine how to explain to an 8-year-old that the life they'd built together was under attack. She emerged from the building with her usual energy, running toward him with the uncomplicated joy that made every sacrifice worthwhile. "How was your day, sweetheart?" "Good. We learned about butterflies in science class." "Did you know they can taste with their feet?" "I didn't know that. Mrs. Rodriguez said they have special sensors that help them find the right flowers. Kind of like how you find problems in helicopters." The innocent comparison struck him like a physical blow. Lily saw her world through the lens of their relationship, finding connections between classroom lessons and her father's work that reflected the security of a child who'd never questioned whether the life they shared would continue. That security was now under threat from people who believed they could provide something better than love, stability, and presence. The battle that lay ahead would test everything Marcus had learned about sacrifice, determination, and the true meaning of putting family first. As they drove home through familiar neighborhoods, Marcus realized that the biggest challenge of his life wasn't about engineering complex machines or making difficult career choices. It was about proving that a father's love was enough. The weekends stretched before Marcus like a minefield, where every step could trigger explosions he wasn't prepared to handle. He'd managed to keep the custody threat from Lily through Friday evening, maintaining their normal routine while internally cataloging everything that could be used against him in court. The apartment that had always felt cozy now seemed cramped. The second-hand furniture that had been perfectly adequate suddenly looked shabby. Every choice made for practical or financial reasons took on sinister implications when viewed through adversarial eyes. Saturday morning brought unexpected reinforcement in the form of Vessa appearing at his door with coffee and pastries from the bakery Lily loved. She wore jeans and a casual sweater that made her look more approachable than the executive powerhouse who commanded boardrooms. But her presence still felt surreal in the domestic context of his apartment. "I hope I'm not overstepping," she said when he opened the door. "I thought you might need someone to talk to. How did you know where I live?" "Employee records. And the fact that you looked like someone had punched you in the stomach yesterday afternoon." Lily appeared in the hallway, drawn by unfamiliar voices and the prospect of weekend visitors. Her eyes widened as she recognized Vessa from the hangar demonstration, the woman who'd kissed her father in front of cameras and curious onlookers. "You're the helicopter lady," Lily said, with the directness that children possessed. "The one who promised to kiss Daddy if he fixed your machine." "That's right. I'm Vessa." She crouched to Lily's eye level, treating the introduction with the seriousness that 8-year-olds demanded. "And you must be Lily. Your father talks about you constantly." "He does. All the time. He says you're the smartest, bravest, most wonderful daughter anyone could ask for." Lily beamed with the unconscious pride of a child who'd never doubted her worth or her father's devotion. "Want to see my room?" "I have a helicopter collection." As Lily led Vessa on a tour that included detailed explanations of each model in her aviation-themed bedroom, Marcus found himself observing the interaction with new eyes. Vessa listened with genuine interest, asked intelligent questions, and treated Lily's enthusiasm with respect rather than patronizing adult tolerance. It was exactly the kind of engagement that his daughter thrived on, the attention that made her feel valued and heard. When they returned to the kitchen, Marcus had made the difficult decision to share the letter. Vessa read it twice, her expression growing more serious with each paragraph. "This is ridiculous," she said finally. "You haven't deceived anyone. You made choices based on your daughter's needs. Try explaining that to a family court judge who's looking at grandparents with unlimited resources and a father who's been working as a mechanic while holding advanced degrees. What if that father was actually using those degrees? What if he had a position commensurate with his qualifications and the financial security to provide everything his daughter needs?" Marcus understood what she was suggesting, but the implications felt overwhelming. "You're talking about accepting your offer. I'm talking about removing their ammunition. They're claiming you misrepresented your capabilities and circumstances. Prove them wrong, and if the court sees it as opportunistic, if they argue I'm only pursuing advancement now because I've been caught, then we document everything. Your qualifications, your experience, the fact that multiple companies have tried to recruit you over the years. We show that the choice to work below your capabilities was deliberate and temporary, not permanent or deceptive." Lily wandered back into the kitchen, drawn by the serious tone of adult conversation. "Are you guys talking about boring grown-up stuff?" "We're talking about Daddy's work," Vessa explained. "About some opportunities that might be good for both of you." "Like what kind of opportunities?" Marcus looked at his daughter, seeing the trust in her eyes that made every decision feel weighted with enormous responsibility. "Maybe a new job. One that would mean more money for things like piano lessons and summer camp. Would you still be home every night?" "Yes." "Would we have to move?" "No, sweetheart. We'd stay right here, Lily considered this information with the seriousness she applied to all matters affecting their shared life. Would the new job make you happy? The question cut to the heart of everything Marcus had been wrestling with since Vessa's offer. Would returning to engineering work make him happy? Or had he become so focused on providing stability that he'd forgotten what personal fulfillment felt like? I think it might, he said honestly. But only if it didn't change the most important parts of our life. Like what? Like bedtime stories and homework help and never missing your school events. Then I think you should try it. If it makes you happy and doesn't change the good stuff, it sounds like a good idea. The simple wisdom of her conclusion highlighted how unnecessarily complicated adult decisions could become. Lily saw the situation clearly because she trusted that her father would protect what mattered most, their relationship, and her security while pursuing opportunities that enhanced rather than threatened their life together. Sunday was spent in preparation that felt like battle planning. Vessa connected Marcus with a family law attorney who specialized in custody cases, someone who could provide strategic advice about presenting his situation in the most favorable light. The consultation was sobering but not hopeless. The key is demonstrating stability and consistency, the lawyer explained during their video call. Show that your decisions have been made in your daughter's best interests, that your circumstances are improving rather than declining, and that the current arrangement serves her welfare better than any alternative. What about the fact that I didn't disclose my full background during the original proceedings? We'll frame it as deliberate career transition, not deception. You chose employment that allowed maximum time with your daughter during her formative years. Now that she's older and more independent, you're returning to work that matches your qualifications while maintaining the same priorities and the grandparents' resources. Money isn't everything. Courts consider emotional bonds, established routines, the child's own preferences when age appropriate. Your daughter has thrived in your care. That's the strongest argument you have. Monday morning brought the formal acceptance of Vessa's offer. Paperwork that transformed Marcus from maintenance mechanic to senior engineering consultant with a salary that tripled his previous income. The promotion felt simultaneously vindicating and terrifying. A public acknowledgement of capabilities he'd kept hidden for 3 years. Welcome back to the world of aerospace engineering, Vessa said, as they signed the final documents in her office. Your first project briefing is this afternoon. And the military contracts? Next week. Pentagon representatives want to review your previous work and discuss adaptation for current defense requirements. Marcus nodded, aware that each step forward in his professional rehabilitation also increased the stakes in the custody battle. Success would strengthen his position, but it would also validate the Sterling's claim that he'd been capable of more than he'd provided. The afternoon project briefing revealed the scope of challenges ahead, next generation, rotorcraft that pushed the boundaries of current technology, engineering problems that would require everything he'd learned in his previous career plus innovations that hadn't existed when he'd stepped away from the field. As he walked through preliminary designs with a team of engineers who'd heard about his demonstration but didn't know his full history, Marcus felt the familiar excitement of complex problem-solving combining with the weight of enormous responsibility. The custody hearing was scheduled for the following Friday. 5 days to prepare for the fight of his life. 5 days to prove that being a devoted father was more valuable than any professional achievement or financial advantage. That evening, Marcus began gathering documentation, performance reviews from Lily's teachers, medical records showing consistent care, financial statements demonstrating responsible budget management despite limited income. Every piece of paper represented a small victory in the larger battle to prove that love and presence mattered more than wealth and privilege. Vessa stopped by after work with dinner and moral support, her presence becoming a steady anchor in seas that felt increasingly turbulent. They sat at the kitchen table after Lily went to bed, organizing documents and discussing strategy with the focus of generals planning a crucial campaign. You're going to win this, Vessa said with the certainty of someone accustomed to achieving difficult objectives. Because you've already proven everything that matters. Lily is thriving, happy, well-adjusted. No court can ignore that. Courts have ignored more obvious truths than that. Then we make it impossible to ignore. We build a case so strong, so comprehensive, that the only rational conclusion is that changing custody would harm. Rather than help her, Marcus looked at the woman who'd entered his life less than 2 weeks ago but had somehow become essential to navigating its most difficult challenge. Why are you doing this? Going so far beyond what any employer would do? Because what's happening to you is wrong. And because, she paused, choosing her words carefully, because I care about both of you more than I expected to. The admission hung between them, weighted with implications neither was quite ready to fully explore. But in that moment, Marcus understood that whatever happened in court, whatever the judge decided about Lily's future, he wasn't facing the battle alone. As he walked Vessa to the door, she turned back with final words of encouragement. Remember, you're not just fighting for custody. You're fighting for the principle that being present matters more than being wealthy. That's a battle worth winning. Marcus spent the remaining days before the hearing in careful preparation. Each moment, a balance between maintaining normalcy for Lily and building the strongest possible defense of their life together. The engineering work continued, providing both distraction and evidence of his professional rehabilitation. By Friday morning, as he dressed in the suit Vessa had helped him select, professional but not pretentious, respectful but not desperate, Marcus felt as ready as anyone could be for a battle where the stakes included everything that gave life. Meaning, he was ready to prove that a father's love was not just enough, it was everything. The courthouse steps felt like ascending toward Judgment Day, each level bringing Marcus closer to a moment that would determine not just his future, but Lily's entire childhood. The building's imposing facade of granite and glass reflected the weight of decisions made within its walls. Choices that reshaped families, determined custody, and decided which love would be deemed sufficient and which would be found wanting. Beside him, Lily walked with the careful dignity of someone who understood that today was important without fully grasping why. She wore her favorite dress, navy blue with small silver stars, that Marcus had ironed with the meticulous attention he applied to everything concerning her welfare. Her hand in his felt small and trusting, a reminder of everything at stake in the proceedings ahead. "Will it take very long?" she asked as they approached the courtroom. "Entrance, a few hours probably. Mrs. Patterson will pick you up from the waiting room when we're done and take you for ice cream while the grown-ups finish talking. Are you nervous?" Marcus stopped walking and knelt to her eye level, taking both her hands in his. Around them, other families navigated their own legal challenges, divorce proceedings, custody modifications, the messy aftermath of relationships that had failed to survive the pressures of ordinary life. "A little," he admitted, "but only because I love you so much and want to make sure we can keep being a family the way we always have been." "We will," Lily said with the absolute certainty that children possessed about things that mattered to them. "You're the best daddy in the world and everybody knows it." The faith in her voice nearly broke his heart. She had no concept of wealth as an advantage, no understanding that courts might value financial resources over emotional bonds. In her world, love was the only currency that mattered, and by that measure, Marcus was the richest man alive. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere felt charged with competing narratives about what constituted proper care for one 8-year-old girl. The Sterlings sat with their attorney at the plaintiff's table, David, tall and distinguished with silver hair that suggested wisdom and success. Martha, elegantly dressed in a way that spoke of country clubs and charitable committees. They looked like the kind of grandparents who appeared in advertisements for retirement planning. People whose lives had unfolded according to predictable patterns of achievement and accumulation. Marcus took his place at the defendant's table with his attorney, Sarah Chen, a family law specialist recommended by Vessa, who'd built her reputation defending fathers' rights in custody cases. She'd reviewed his file with the thoroughness of someone who understood the details often determined outcomes in matters of such personal importance. Remember, she said quietly as they waited for the judge to enter, this isn't about proving you're perfect. It's about proving you're the better choice for Lily's well-being. The burden is on them to show that change would serve her interests. Better than maintaining the current arrangement, Judge Margaret Donovan entered with the brisk efficiency of someone who'd presided over hundreds of custody cases, each one a unique constellation of hope and heartbreak played out in legal arguments and evidence presentations. She was younger than Marcus had expected, perhaps 50, with graying hair and eyes that suggested both compassion and impatience for anything that wasted the court's time. This matter concerns a petition for modification of custody regarding the minor child Lily Sarah Thorne, she began, consulting the file before her. The petitioners, Mr. and Mrs. David Sterling, seek modification based on changed circumstances regarding the current custodial parent. Mr. Morton, you may present your opening argument. The Sterling's attorney rose with the confidence of someone accustomed to winning. Richard Morton was everything Marcus had expected. Expensive suit, silver tongue. The kind of polished presentation that impressed juries and intimidated opponents. Your Honor, this case concerns a fundamental question of honesty and the best interests of a young girl whose future hangs in the balance. When custody was originally determined 5 years ago, Mr. Thorne presented himself as a maintenance worker with limited financial resources and modest professional prospects. Based on those representations, the court granted custody to a father who claimed he could provide adequate but not exceptional care. Morton paused, allowing his words to settle before delivering the accusation that formed the heart of their case. We now know those representations were false. Mr. Thorne is not a simple mechanic, but a highly qualified aerospace engineer with advanced degrees from MIT and professional experience that would have commanded significant compensation. He deliberately misrepresented his circumstances to gain an advantage in custody proceedings. Marcus felt the sting of hearing his sacrifices reframed as deception, his choices portrayed as manipulation rather than love. Across the courtroom, he could see the Sterlings nodding with satisfaction at their attorney's characterization. Furthermore, Morton continued, Mr. Thorne's recent emergence into the public eye through viral social media coverage has created circumstances that threaten the child's privacy and normal development. The petitioners offer a stable, private environment where Lily would have access to superior educational opportunities, extended family support, and financial resources that would ensure her future security. The attorney gestured toward his clients with pride that felt genuine rather than manufactured. David and Martha Sterling are successful business owners, pillars of their community, and devoted grandparents who have the means and desire to provide Lily with every advantage life can offer. They seek custody not from selfish motives, but from genuine concern that the child's current situation no longer serves her best interests. When Morton finished and returned to his seat, the courtroom fell silent except for the whisper of air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic outside. Marcus felt the weight of accusations settling on his shoulders like lead, each carefully crafted argument designed to transform his greatest strength, his devotion to Lily, into evidence of his inadequacy as a parent. Judge Donovan turned her attention to the defense table. Ms. Chen, your opening statement. Sarah Chen rose with the measured confidence of someone who'd built her career defending the underdog in family law cases. Unlike Morton's theatrical presentation, her manner was conversational, intimate, as if she were sharing a story rather than delivering legal arguments. Your Honor, this case is indeed about honesty, the honesty of a man who gave up professional advancement to be present for his daughter's childhood. 5 years ago, Marcus Thorne made a choice that thousands of parents face: career success or family commitment. He chose family. She moved closer to the judge's bench, her voice carrying the weight of conviction. The petitioners would have this court believe that Mr. Thorne's decision to work below his qualifications represents deception. In reality, it represents the kind of sacrifice that defines excellent parenting. He traded income for presents, professional recognition for bedtime stories, career advancement for school pickup lines. Chen paused, allowing the contrast to register before continuing. The result speaks for itself. Lily Thorne is a thriving, happy, academically successful child who has never known an absent father. She has never wondered whether work would prevent him from attending her school events, never competed with career demands for his attention, never felt that professional achievement mattered more than her well-being. Marcus watched the judge's face for any sign of how the competing narratives were being received. But her judicial training made her expression neutral, giving no indication of which argument carried greater weight. The petitioners offer financial resources, Chen concluded. Mr. Thorne offers something far more valuable, consistent, devoted, present parenting that has produced a child who embodies the very best outcomes our custody laws are designed to protect. As the opening statements concluded and the court prepared to hear evidence, Marcus realized that the battle for his daughter's future would be fought with competing definitions of love, one measured in dollars and opportunities, the other in presence and sacrifice. The question now was which definition would prevail. The morning testimony had established the battleground. Marcus's sacrifices versus the Sterling's resources, love versus opportunity, presence versus provision. Now, as afternoon light filtered through the courtroom's tall windows, the real battle would begin with witness testimony that would determine Lily's future. Mrs. Rodriguez took the witness stand first, her presence bringing a breath of elementary school normalcy into the formal legal proceedings. As Lily's teacher, she represented the perspective of someone who'd observed the results of Marcus's parenting choices on a daily basis. In my 23 years of teaching, she testified under Sarah Chen's careful questioning, I've seen the full spectrum of parental involvement. Some parents are physically present but emotionally absent. Others provide material advantages but lack genuine connection with their children. Mr. Thorne represents something rarer, a parent who is both present and engaged. Can you give us specific examples? Chen asked. Lily has never missed a parent-teacher conference, school event, or volunteer opportunity where parents were welcome. But beyond attendance, Mr. Thorne knows his daughter intimately. He understands her learning style, her social dynamics, her emotional needs. When she struggled with fractions last year, he developed creative teaching methods that helped her master the concept. When she had friendship difficulties, he provided guidance that helped her navigate the situation independently. Mrs. Rodriguez's testimony painted a picture of active, thoughtful parenting that went far beyond basic care provision. She described a father who knew his daughter's friends by name, understood her academic strengths and challenges, and maintained consistent communication with school staff about her development. Under cross-examination, Morton attempted to undermine her testimony by suggesting that emotional engagement couldn't compensate for limited resources. Wouldn't Lily benefit from private tutoring if she struggles academically? Advanced enrichment programs that public schools can't provide? Educational travel that broadens perspectives beyond what local experiences offer? Mrs. Rodriguez considered the question carefully before responding. In my experience, the most successful students are those whose parents are actively engaged in their education, regardless of the school's resources. Lily consistently performs at the top of her class because her father values learning and demonstrates that value daily. No amount of external enrichment can substitute for that foundation. Jerry Bowen testified next, representing Marcus's workplace relationships and the respect he'd earned among colleagues who'd known him only as a mechanic. His blue-collar authenticity contrasted sharply with the courtroom's formal atmosphere, but his sincerity was unmistakable. Marcus is the kind of guy you want on your team, Jerry explained. Reliable, skilled, always willing to help others. But what impressed me most was how he talked about his daughter. Every conversation eventually came around to Lily. Something funny, she'd said, a school achievement, a project they were working on together. You could tell she was the center of his world. Did his dedication to his daughter ever interfere with his work performance? Chen asked. Never. If anything, it made him more focused. He knew people depended on him, that his paycheck supported Lily's needs. That responsibility made him one of our most dependable employees. Morton's cross-examination focused on the financial limitations of Marcus's previous position, the inability to provide advantages that wealth could offer. But Jerry's responses consistently returned to character assessment rather than economic analysis. Money's important, he acknowledged. But I've known plenty of people with money who couldn't organize a one-car parade. Marcus has something more valuable, the ability to make good decisions under pressure and put family first. That's worth more than a big salary. The afternoon's most crucial testimony came from an unexpected source. Vessa had insisted on appearing as a character witness, despite concerns about how her romantic interest might complicate her credibility. She took the stand wearing a conservative business suit that emphasized her professional authority rather than personal involvement. I've known Marcus Thorne for less than a month, she began in response to Chen's questions. But in that time, I've observed something remarkable. He's one of the most qualified engineers I've ever encountered, capable of commanding salaries that would place him in the top 5% of earners nationally. Yet for 5 years, he deliberately chose work that paid a fraction of his worth because it allowed him to be present for his daughter. As a CEO, how do you evaluate that choice? From a business perspective, it seems irrational. From a parenting perspective, it's extraordinary. Most people chase advancement regardless of personal cost. Marcus reversed those priorities. He made career decisions based on family needs rather than making family decisions based on career demands. Vessa's testimony carried particular weight because she represented the business world that valued achievement and ambition above most other considerations. Her validation of Marcus's choices came from someone who understood both the professional opportunities he'd sacrificed and the rarity of finding people willing to make such sacrifices. Morton's cross-examination attempted to suggest that Vessa's romantic interest compromised her objectivity, but she handled the questioning with professional grace. My personal feelings for Mr. Thorne developed because of the character traits I observed professionally, she explained. His dedication to his daughter, his willingness to sacrifice for her well-being, his integrity in honoring commitments. These aren't just attractive personal qualities, they're evidence of the moral foundation that makes him an exceptional parent. The day's final testimony came from an unexpected source, Lily herself. Judge Donovan had requested a private chambers meeting to hear directly from the child whose future was being debated. Marcus wasn't allowed to attend, leaving him to wait in the hallway while his daughter spoke for herself about where she wanted to live. The meeting lasted 45 minutes, during which Marcus paced the corridor like an expectant father awaiting news of a birth. Sarah Chen sat beside him, offering reassurance that felt hollow against the magnitude of what was happening behind closed doors. When the door finally opened, Lily emerged first, running directly to Marcus with the emotional relief of someone who'd successfully navigated a difficult challenge. Judge Donovan appeared in the doorway, her expression revealing nothing about what had transpired during their conversation. "We'll reconvene Monday morning for closing arguments," she announced. "I need the weekend to review all testimony and consider the child's expressed preferences." As they left the courthouse, Marcus felt the strange combination of relief and anxiety that came with having done everything possible while knowing the outcome remained beyond his control. The testimony had gone well. Witnesses had painted a clear picture of devoted fatherhood that transcended financial limitations. But legal proceedings often produced results that defied logic or justice. "What did you tell the judge?" he asked Lily as they walked to the truck. "The truth. That you're the best daddy ever, and I want to stay with you forever," What else did she ask? About my friends and school and whether I like our apartment. She wanted to know if I ever felt sad about not having more money for fancy things. And what did you say? That fancy things don't matter if you don't have someone to share them with, and that you're the only family I need. The words carried the simple wisdom of a child who understood what truly mattered. Marcus pulled her close, grateful for the clarity that came from uncomplicated love. The kind of certainty that adults often lost in their pursuit of security and status. That evening, Vessa joined them for dinner, a quiet meal that felt like the calm before a storm. They talked about everything except Monday's hearing, maintaining normalcy for Lily's sake, while privately wrestling with fears about what the judge's decision might bring. After Lily went to bed, Marcus and Vessa sat together on the small balcony, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. The silence between them was comfortable, the kind of quiet that came from shared understanding rather than awkward uncertainty. Whatever happens Monday, Vessa said finally, you've already proven everything that matters. The way Lily talks about you, the confidence she has in your love, that's not something money can buy or courts can take away, unless the court decides she'd be better off in California with grandparents who can give her opportunities I can't provide. Then we fight the decision, appeal if necessary. But I don't think it'll come to that. Judge Donovan strikes me as someone who understands the difference between wealth and well-being. Marcus wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that justice would prevail, and love would be recognized as more valuable than financial advantage. But 5 years of single parenthood had taught him that hope was a luxury best tempered with pragmatic preparation for disappointment. "Thank you," he said, "for testifying, for being here, for caring about someone else's kid when you barely know us. I know enough. And besides," she reached for his hand, "you're not someone else anymore. You're someone who matters, both of you." The admission hung in the night air, weighted with implications about futures that extended beyond Monday's hearing. Whatever the judge decided, whatever challenges lay ahead, Marcus understood that his life had fundamentally changed in ways that went beyond professional advancement or legal battles. He'd found someone who understood sacrifice, valued presence over pretense, and recognized that the greatest measure of success wasn't what you accumulated, but who you loved and how well you loved them. As they sat together under emerging stars, Marcus allowed himself to imagine a future where love multiplied rather than divided, where Lily gained not just a father's devotion, but a broader family built on choice rather than obligation. Monday would bring the judge's decision. But tonight, there was only this moment, quiet, precious, and filled with the kind of hope that came from knowing he'd done everything possible to protect what mattered most. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. 6 months later, the morning alarm at 5:30 a.m. still found Marcus awake before it sounded. But now the early hour served a different purpose. Instead of stolen moments to process worry and responsibility, the pre-dawn darkness offered time for coffee with Vessa before their respective days began. She'd moved in gradually over the spring, her presence transforming their small apartment from a fortress of careful self-sufficiency into a home where love multiplied rather than divided. Lily still slept with the same peaceful abandon, though her stuffed helicopter had been joined by a collection of books about aerospace engineering that Vessa had given her, advanced texts that a 9-year-old couldn't fully understand but treasured because they connected her to both her father's work and her own growing fascination with flight. The custody battle had ended with Judge Donovan's decisive ruling that maintaining the status quo served Lily's best interests, far better than any alternative the petitioners could offer. Her written decision had been thorough and emphatic. While the court recognizes the material advantages the petitioners could provide, the evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that the minor child has thrived under her father's care. Mr. Thorne's career choices reflect admirable prioritization of parental responsibility over professional advancement. The child's academic success, emotional stability, and clear preference for maintaining her current living arrangement outweigh any theoretical benefits that alternative custody might provide. The Sterlings had chosen not to appeal, perhaps recognizing that their granddaughter's happiness was more important than their desire to provide what they considered proper advantages. They'd settled for increased visitation rights, summer vacations, and holiday visits that allowed them to be part of Lily's life without disrupting the foundation Marcus had built. The new position at Meridian had exceeded every expectation Marcus had allowed himself to consider. Working with cutting-edge technology while maintaining family-centered priorities proved that sacrifice didn't require martyrdom. Sometimes it simply required creativity in finding solutions that served multiple needs. Simultaneously, the military contracts had materialized into projects that challenged him intellectually, while keeping him grounded literally. His team was developing next-generation search and rescue helicopters that would save lives in disasters and emergencies, work that felt meaningful in ways that purely commercial aviation never had. "You're thinking loud thoughts again," Vessa said as she joined him in the kitchen, her hair still tousled from sleep but her eyes already alert, with the intelligence that had first attracted him. "Just reflecting on how different everything is from a year ago. Better different or just different?" Marcus considered the question while watching her move through their morning routine, their routine now seamlessly integrated in ways that felt both natural and miraculous. The apartment that had once felt cramped now accommodated 3 people with the efficiency that came from genuine compatibility. Better. Definitely better. Lily appeared in the hallway with the punctuality of someone whose body clock had been trained by years of consistent schedules. At 9 now, she showed signs of the remarkable young woman she was becoming, thoughtful, confident, curious about everything from helicopter design to ancient history, to whether the college students upstairs would ever learn to do laundry properly. "Good morning, family," she announced, using the term that had evolved naturally as Vessa's presence became permanent rather than temporary. "Good morning, sweetheart. Ready for the field trip?" Today's adventure was a visit to the National Air and Space Museum, a family expedition that had been planned for months. Vessa would join them, her schedule cleared for a rare weekday excursion that prioritized experience over corporate obligations. "I packed my notebook," Lily said, patting her backpack. "Mrs. Rodriguez said we should write down questions for the tour guides." Smart thinking. "What kind of questions do you have so far? How do helicopters stay stable in high winds? What's the difference between military and civilian rotor designs? And can girls be helicopter pilots?" Vessa smiled. "The answer to that last one is definitely yes. In fact, I'd love to learn to fly someday. Maybe we could all take lessons together." The suggestion sparked animated discussion over breakfast, Lily's enthusiasm infectious as she imagined scenarios where their small family became a flying crew. Marcus watched the interaction with quiet contentment, marveling at how seamlessly Vessa had integrated into their lives without trying to replace the mother Lily still remembered with affection. The museum visit exceeded expectations. 3 hours of exploration that fed Lily's curiosity, while allowing Marcus to share technical knowledge in ways that made complex concepts accessible. Vessa asked questions that demonstrated genuine interest rather than polite tolerance, engaging with exhibits about aviation history and future innovations with the same intensity she brought to corporate strategy sessions. In the rotorcraft exhibit, Lily stood transfixed before a vintage military helicopter, reading the placard that described its service history. "Daddy, did you ever fly one like this?" "Similar models." "That's a Huey, workhorse of several generations of military operations. Were you scared when you were flying in dangerous situations?" Marcus knelt beside his daughter, aware that Vessa was listening with equal interest to his answer. "Sometimes. But fear can be useful if you don't let it control you. It keeps you alert, makes you careful, reminds you that what you're doing matters." "Is that why you stopped? Because it was too scary?" "No, sweetheart. I stopped because being your father mattered more than anything else I could do with my life." And I've never regretted that choice, not for a single day. Lily hugged him with the fierce affection of a child who understood love in its purest form, unconditional, unwavering, and more valuable than any achievement or recognition. Over her shoulder, Marcus caught Vessa's eye and saw reflected there an understanding that needed no words. They ate lunch in the museum cafe, discussing exhibits and debating which aircraft design was most impressive. The conversation flowed naturally between technical details and personal observations. Three people who'd become family, not through obligation, but through choice and shared values. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed with a new book about aerospace pioneers, Marcus and Vessa sat together on the balcony that had become their sanctuary for quiet conversations. The city spread below them, lights twinkling like earthbound stars that marked millions of other lives unfolding in their own unique patterns. "I got the promotion offer today," Vessa said. "Vice President of Operations for the entire Defense Division. That's incredible. Congratulations. It would mean more travel, higher profile, additional responsibilities that could complicate our current balance." Marcus heard the unspoken question beneath her words. "What do you want to do?" "I want to build something that matters. The work we're doing on rescue helicopters, that's saving lives, making a real difference. But I also want this." She gestured to encompass their shared space, the life they'd built together. "I don't want to repeat the mistakes I've seen other executives make, sacrificing everything personal for professional advancement." "So what's the answer?" "I think it's the same answer you found. Not choosing one over the other, but finding ways to honor both. Taking the promotion but setting boundaries. Achieving professional goals while protecting personal priorities." Marcus reached for her hand, struck by how their separate journeys had led to shared understanding. "When did you get so wise about work-life balance?" "When I met a man who showed me what real priorities look like, who taught me that success isn't measured by titles or salaries, but by the people you love and the difference you make in their lives." They sat in comfortable silence. Two people who'd found in each other what they'd been missing, partnership that enhanced rather than complicated, love that multiplied joy rather than dividing attention, understanding that came from shared values rather than similar backgrounds. Inside, Lily slept peacefully, dreaming perhaps of helicopters and adventures, secure in the knowledge that she was loved beyond measure by people who'd chosen to build a family based on commitment rather than convention. The custody battle seemed distant now, a crisis that had tested their resolve but ultimately strengthened their bonds. The Sterling summer visit had gone well, grandparents and granddaughter building connections that enriched rather than threatened her primary relationships. Marcus's work at Meridian continued to challenge and fulfill him, engineering problems that engaged his intellect while allowing him to maintain the presence that Lily needed. The military contracts had brought recognition and financial security without the constant travel that had once defined his career. Most importantly, he'd learned that sacrifice didn't mean martyrdom, that choosing family over career advancement didn't require abandoning professional fulfillment entirely. It simply required creativity, boundaries, and partnership with people who understood and shared your values. "I love you," Vessa said quietly, the words carrying weight that came from careful consideration rather than impulsive emotion. "Both of you, this life we're building together, we love you too. All of this, it's more than I ever imagined possible." As they sat together under emerging stars, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, he'd been invisible, carefully constructing a life designed to protect one precious relationship at the cost of everything else. Now he'd found a way to honor both aspects of his identity, devoted father and accomplished engineer, while building something even more valuable, a family chosen rather than inherited, love that enhanced rather than constrained, and the understanding that true success was measured not by what you accumulated, but by the depth of your connections and the positive impact you made on the people you loved. The morning, Alarm would sound again at 5:30, beginning another day of juggling responsibilities and cherishing moments. But now, those moments would be shared with people who understood their value, who recognized that the greatest achievements weren't recorded in professional accomplishments, but in the quiet miracles of daily love and commitment. Marcus Thorne had started as a man hiding from his past, working below his capabilities to protect what mattered most. He'd become someone who proved that sacrifice and success weren't mutually exclusive, that love was the foundation from which all other achievements gained meaning. And in the end, that was the only recognition that truly mattered.